Hi everyone, my name is Catherine, and I want to share a story about how luck played a significant role in my life, especially concerning my ex-husband Jonathan and his mother Emma, who attempted to undermine me. I don't consider myself a mastermind with elaborate schemes for revenge. The turn of events in my favor was entirely coincidental, combined with Emma's lack of judgment. Let's start from the top. When Jonathan and I were dating and eventually got married, I saw him as an incredibly driven individual. He perfectly balanced being a caring partner while also pouring immense effort into his work. During our time together, Jonathan made sure I felt loved and supported in every possible way. He was in the process of growing his business, aiming for great success, and I was fully supportive, admiring his dedication. My interest was never in his wealth. However, Emma, his mother, was convinced from the start that I was only after his financial gains. Emma would often confront me, claiming she knew my true intentions were focused on Jonathan's wealth. But the reality was, when Jonathan and I began our relationship, he was far from being wealthy. I supported him unconditionally, never seeking financial gain. Emma, on the other hand, believed she had educated Jonathan to prioritize financial success above all else, including relationships. She claimed her teachings were the reason behind his ambition. However, I saw a flaw in her pride. Jonathan's obsession with wealth wasn't about passion or fulfillment. It was purely about accumulating riches, a mentality deeply ingrained by Emma. Despite Emma's insistence that Jonathan would choose money over our relationship, I hoped for a different outcome. Unfortunately, my marriage to Jonathan proved Emma's point. After we got married, Jonathan changed drastically. He became distant, pouring all his energy into his work, leaving no room for affection or warmth in our relationship. This shift in his behavior was disheartening, and I found myself clinging to the hope that the situation would improve. In this story, you'll see how unexpected circumstances and sheer luck led me through a challenging chapter of my life, facing deception from those I once trusted. It's a tale of resilience, the unpredictability of fate, and the realization that sometimes we find strength and vindication in the most unexpected ways. Jonathan was under a lot of pressure due to his personal aspirations for his business, and at first, I tried to be understanding. However, after 3 years with no change, I realized we couldn't continue this way. I approached Jonathan, expressing how our marriage felt more like a contract than a relationship. I told him, "Jonathan, we've lost our connection. You've stopped showing me any affection, and our dates have become a thing of the past. I feel neglected." Jonathan's response was dismissive. "Why should I take you out? Dates are just unnecessary expenses. I'm not working this hard for you to live like royalty. We're married. Those romantic gestures are no longer required." I tried to explain that it wasn't about the money, but about spending quality time together. Jonathan, however, couldn't see past the financial aspect, asking sarcastically if taking time off would somehow increase his bank balance. I felt deeply hurt, not just by Jonathan's indifference, but also by the realization that he valued money over our relationship. This mentality, I believe, was heavily influenced by his mother, Emma. She continued to encourage Jonathan to prioritize work and money above everything else, including our marriage. Eventually, the lack of affection and the loneliness became unbearable, leading me to file for divorce. Jonathan resisted, but it seemed his main concern was the financial implications, particularly the alimony payments. Given the significant difference in our incomes, the court decided in my favor. Emma's reaction to the divorce proceedings was vitriolic. She accused me of marrying Jonathan for his wealth, calling me a gold digger and blaming me for his suffering. Despite her accusations, I stood my ground, reaffirming that my decision to leave was due to Jonathan's neglect and obsession with money, a trait that Emma herself had nurtured in him. In our final conversations, Emma remained unyielding, insisting that money should be Jonathan's only concern, and derogatorily referring to me as a gold digger. These exchanges only confirmed my decision to leave, as it became clear that both Jonathan and Emma valued wealth over love, connection, and the basic elements of a meaningful relationship. Emma made it clear she was determined to support her son through the aftermath of our divorce, expressing hope that the court wouldn't grant me any financial support. Despite her resolve, I noticed that Jonathan had become increasingly distant from her since I moved out. In his newfound solitude, Jonathan seemed to focus more on protecting his wealth, gradually excluding anyone who might have a claim to his assets. This behavior raised red flags for me, suggesting that he might be struggling with deeper issues that warranted professional help. His actions grew increasingly erratic, with his mother being the sole constant in his life, up until a peculiar incident occurred shortly after our divorce. One morning, as I was preparing for work, I was caught off guard by an unexpected visitor, Emma, my ex-mother-in-law. Her presence was a surprise, not just because she lived out of town, but because she had remained mostly absent during the divorce, except to spur on Jonathan. Her anger over the court's decision to award me a significant portion of Jonathan's wealth and alimony was evident, making her visit even more baffling. Without invitation, Emma barged into my home, insisting on a conversation. I decided to play the host and went to prepare some coffee. However, upon returning, I caught her rummaging through my bag. She didn't notice my return, and before I could confront her about her actions, she pretended nothing happened. As we sat down, I questioned the purpose of her visit, knowing full well it had to be significant for her to seek me out, especially given her previous hostility. Emma's response was cutting. She mocked my social desirability and usefulness, making it clear she held me in contempt. Yet, her presence in my home suggested an underlying urgency, or perhaps an emergency. Emma's real intent, it turned out, was to belittle me further, accusing me of ruining her son's life and labeling me as worthless. This confrontation highlighted the toxic dynamics that had plagued my relationship with Jonathan and his mother, underscoring the profound misunderstandings and misplaced values that led to our divorce. Despite the unpleasantness, this incident only reaffirmed my decision to leave a situation where wealth and material concerns were prioritized over human connection and emotional well-being. Emma's visit culminated in a barrage of accusations and threats, labeling me as the cause of Jonathan's financial woes post-divorce. She insisted that my motives were always centered on his wealth, a claim that couldn't be further from the truth. My decision to divorce Jonathan was due to his emotional absence, not financial gain. The court's decision on the divorce settlement was based on legal standards, not my desires. Despite her belief that I had somehow manipulated the outcome to bleed her son dry, the truth was that the court acted on its discretion, not mine. Emma's tirade was both bewildering and exasperating. Her decision to confront me personally, after a lengthy drive, just to unleash a stream of insults and threats, seemed like an extreme measure for someone who believed they were on the side of righteousness. Her departure left me in a state of shock, reflecting on the absurdity of the situation. The real intrigue began the next day, when recalling Emma's furtive rummaging through my bag, I decided to check my belongings. To my dismay, my credit card was missing. Despite a thorough search, the card remained unaccounted for, leading me to suspect Emma had taken it. Without concrete proof, such as video evidence, I was in a precarious position. However, the opportunity to uncover the truth presented itself unexpectedly 3 weeks later when Jonathan contacted me, infuriated over charges made on his credit card amounting to $210,000. Confused, I assured him of my innocence, having ceased using the card well before our divorce. Jonathan's accusations were unfounded. He claimed the card had been used for lavish spending at a resort, an activity so far removed from my current lifestyle, it bordered on the absurd. His conviction that I was responsible, despite my protests and the lack of logic in his claim, hinted at a deeper misunderstanding or manipulation at play. This situation not only highlighted the ongoing mistrust and animosity between us, but also hinted at a potentially deliberate act of sabotage. If Emma had indeed taken my credit card during her visit, this could be her way of framing me, an act of revenge that would not only strain any residual cordiality between Jonathan and me, but also potentially involve legal repercussions. The unraveling of this mystery required careful handling and undeniable proof of my innocence. When Jonathan called me, perplexed and angry over a staggering $210,000 charge on his credit card, he was convinced I was behind it. He detailed transactions that pointed to a lavish vacation in the U.S. Virgin Islands, activities and luxuries far beyond what I would consider. Despite his accusations, I knew I wasn't responsible. I was getting ready for work, far from the tropical paradise of the U.S. Virgin Islands. My immediate suspicion fell on Emma, who had visited me after the divorce under the pretense of voicing her displeasure, but likely had ulterior motives. I reassured Jonathan of my innocence, suggesting a possible suspect behind the transactions. The timing of Emma's visit and the subsequent disappearance of my credit card seemed too coincidental. It appeared she may have taken it, not just to vent her frustrations, but to entrap me in a financial debacle as retribution for the divorce settlement. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I called Emma, deciding to record our conversation for evidence. Her initial taunt when she answered hinted at her guilt. She didn't just admit to taking my credit card, she gloated about using it to fund a luxurious vacation to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Emma detailed her extravagant escapades, funded by the stolen card, with no remorse. She boasted about the grand tour and 5-star experiences she and her friends were enjoying, all at my expense. This confession was the smoking gun I needed. Emma's act of revenge not only put me in a precarious position with Jonathan, but also highlighted her willingness to go to great lengths to spite me. Her reckless spending spree, under the guise of my identity, was a serious crime. Armed with this confession, I now had the evidence required to take legal action, not only to rectify the financial damages, but also to hold Emma accountable for her vindictive and unlawful behavior. Emma's gleeful admission to spending $210,000 using my credit card was shocking. She justified her actions as a form of revenge, claiming it was payback for the divorce settlement I received from her son. Her tone, mixed with a hint of laughter, suggested she saw her extravagant spree as a righteous balancing of the scales. Her confession, however, was more than just an admission of guilt. It was a clear indication of her complete disregard for legal and moral boundaries. Emma seemed oblivious to the gravity of her actions, not only in terms of the financial theft, but also in the personal betrayal and the potential legal repercussions. She bragged about continuing her spending frenzy, convinced that her physical distance from me made her untouchable. Yet, as she ranted about her plan, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of her situation. This seemed to puzzle and irritate Emma. She couldn't understand my lack of concern over her spending my money. My response that she could keep and use the card as much as she liked only added to her confusion. Emma's misunderstanding was profound. She assumed her actions were a direct financial burden on me. However, the reality was quite different. When I revealed that it was Jonathan who would be notified of the expenditures due to the card being linked to his bank account and him being responsible for the bills as per the court's decision, the situation took on a new dimension. This card wasn't just any card. It was a supplementary card issued under Jonathan's account, making him liable for the charges. Her plan, intended to make me suffer, was flawed from the start. Emma's shock at learning the consequences of her actions, that she had inadvertently saddled her own son with a hefty bill, underscored the short-sightedness and impulsivity of her revenge. This revelation not only highlighted the potential legal implications for her, but also the unintended financial strain on Jonathan, making her scheme backfire spectacularly. Emma was taken aback when I coolly thanked her for relieving me of the credit card, a relic from my time with Jonathan that he had neglected to reclaim post-divorce. Her silence was palpable over the phone as she processed the implications of her actions. It seemed she had either overlooked or conveniently forgotten the court's decision, which mandated Jonathan to cover my credit card expenses. This card, linked directly to Jonathan's bank account for business expenditures, was a financial obligation he was legally bound to fulfill. When I clarified the situation, highlighting that it was Jonathan who would bear the financial burden of her spending spree, Emma's confidence crumbled into a panic. Her repeated denials and eventual abrupt hang-ups were telltale signs of her realization and regret. She had not only misjudged the situation, but had inadvertently set herself up for a fallout with her son. Armed with the recorded confession, I had substantial leverage, not just over Emma, but in reshaping her relationship with Jonathan. I pondered over Jonathan's potential reaction, knowing his affection for his mother was likely overshadowed by his zeal for wealth preservation. Following Emma's hasty retreat from our conversation, I reached out to Jonathan to unfold the events. I presented him with a choice. Either we could jointly report the unauthorized use of the card to the authorities, or he could handle the matter personally. Jonathan's immediate concern over the hefty sum lost indicated his readiness to pursue the culprit. Revealing that Emma was behind the theft required a moment of preparation, given the magnitude of the revelation. Her actions not only constituted a betrayal of trust, but also a significant financial loss for Jonathan. This disclosure was poised to test the bounds of familial loyalty against the backdrop of financial security, setting the stage for an inevitable confrontation between mother and son over a deeply misguided attempt at retribution. Last week, amidst an unexpected visit where Emma accused me of ruining Jonathan's life, it turns out her real motive might have been to swipe my credit card. Jonathan was skeptical at first, finding it hard to believe his mother could be behind such a deceit, especially since she too was vacationing in U.S. Virgin Islands. Despite his doubts, I assured him I wasn't making baseless accusations. I had Emma's own confession. I explained to Jonathan that Emma had admitted to taking the card, thinking she was retaliating against the divorce settlement I received. She aimed to balance the scales by spending what she presumed was my money. Skeptically, Jonathan requested evidence, so I sent him the recording of Emma's admission. The revelation left Jonathan stunned and furious, prompting a call back to me. Confirming the evidence was sufficient, he expressed disbelief at his mother's actions and resolved not to cover the expenses himself. He even mentioned the possibility of legal action against Emma, a move that surprised me given his usual prioritization of financial matters over familial relationships. Jonathan's willingness to sue his own mother underscored the extent of his frustration and the influence of Emma's materialistic values on him. I agreed to accompany Jonathan to the police station, although the idea of him suing his mother was still shocking to me. It seemed Emma's relentless focus on wealth had shaped Jonathan's perspective too deeply, leading to this dramatic turn of events. After our conversation, Jonathan confronted Emma, who was reportedly full of remorse. The situation had spiraled beyond her initial intentions, revealing the complicated dynamics between mother and son, driven by misguided attempts at retribution and deeply ingrained values around money. The unfolding drama, while unfortunate, was a poignant reminder of the consequences that come from letting material concerns override family bonds. Once Emma realized the financial mess she had created using Jonathan's funds, the situation escalated quickly. Jonathan's fury was palpable, and he demanded repayment, threatening legal action if she failed to comply. Emma, perhaps underestimating her son's resolve, initially dismissed his threats as mere bluster. However, the tension between them soared, culminating in a heated exchange that cut her vacation short. Despite returning home early, Emma harbored hope she could evade the financial repercussions of her actions. But Jonathan's patience was wearing thin. After issuing a final ultimatum and enlisting his lawyer to reinforce his stance, the gravity of the situation dawned on Emma. Confronted with the legal consequences, she resorted to pleading and tears. faced with the daunting prospect of double shifts to settle her debt. Jonathan remained unmoved by Emma's distress. His decision was final, leading Emma to sign a formal agreement under the watchful eye of Jonathan's lawyer, ensuring she fulfilled her financial obligations. This arrangement has left Emma juggling multiple jobs to chip away at the sizable debt. The aftermath of this ordeal has irreparably damaged Jonathan and Emma's relationship. Mutual resentment festers, with both parties blaming the other for the fallout, severing their once close bond. As for me, observing the unraveling of this familial discord from a distance has been an unexpected source of closure. It affirmed my decision to distance myself from their turmoil, offering a stark reminder of the freedom I've gained from leaving such a tumultuous marriage and family behind.